This, my friend, is a gift for you. Little something I thought might come in handy as you start this new chapter of your professional career.
Honey, that's so sweet.
It's a clock.
From a dog rescued from an animal shelter who became TV royalty to a citywide blackout that rewrote sitcom history, Mad About You hid some seriously bizarre secrets behind its seemingly normal married couple comedy. Get ready to discover awkward audition stories, real-life grudges turned into episodes, and the strange way a beloved character got her unusual name. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Mad About You. Fact 1. Terry Hatcher nearly became Jamie Buckman.
You know, when I'm far enough away from all that stuff to feel like how grateful I am to have survived in this business.
When casting began for Mad About You. In 1992, the role of Jamie Buckman came down to two talented actresses who would both go on to have massive careers, but in very different ways. Helen Hunt and Terry Hatcher both auditioned for the part, and the competition was incredibly close. Hatcher, who would later become famous as Lois Lane in Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, was seriously considered for the role that would eventually define Hunt's career. According to reports from the casting process, both actresses delivered strong performances, but Helen Hunt managed to edge out her competition through a brilliant bit of improvisation that caught everyone's attention. During her audition, Hunt was reading from the pilot script, which included a scene where the characters were trying to decide what to eat. Instead of just reading the lines straight, Hunt started doing an impression of Paul Reiser's character struggling to make a decision about food, capturing his neurotic energy and indecisiveness perfectly. This spontaneous choice showed the casting directors and producers that Hunt understood the character's relationship dynamic and could match Reiser's comedic timing right from the start. Her ability to mirror and play off Reiser's style convinced them she was the right choice. Helen Hunt would go on to win 4 consecutive Emmy Awards for the role, while Terry Hatcher found her own path to television stardom just a few years later. It's fascinating to imagine how different the show might have been with Hatcher in the lead role, and how different both of their careers might have turned out if that audition had gone the other way. Fact 2. Paul Reiser played piano on theme song.
You see her all the time, yeah. You know, for those years, when you make a show, you're with people more than your family, so we were all together.
The instantly recognizable theme song that opened every episode of Mad About You wasn't just another piece of television music commissioned from outside composers. Paul Reiser, the show's co-creator and star, was deeply involved in creating the instrumental piece titled Final Frontier that became the show's musical signature. Reiser collaborated with musician and producer Don Was, who had worked with artists like the Rolling Stones and Bonnie Raitt to compose the jazzy romantic theme that perfectly captured the mood of the series. But Reiser's involvement didn't stop at writing the melody. He actually sat down at the piano himself and performed the piano parts that you hear in the final recording used throughout the show's 7-season run. This personal touch added an authentic layer to the opening credits that viewers heard week after week without necessarily knowing the star himself was playing. Reiser has always been musically inclined, and his decision to perform on the theme song reflected his hands-on approach to the entire series. The music has a warm, intimate feel that matches the show's focus on the small, everyday moments in a marriage, and knowing that Reiser played it himself makes it feel even more personal. The theme became so associated with the show that it's instantly recognizable to fans decades later. This wasn't just a case of slapping any generic sitcom music onto the opening credits. It was a carefully crafted piece that came directly from the creative vision of the person who knew these characters best, and his own fingers on the keys gave it a genuineness that perfectly suited the series. Fact 3. Steve Buscemi held a real grudge won.
Oh, then you go, oh, this is wood burning, or this is something that you recognize burning.
Of the most memorable episodes of Mad About You featured acclaimed actor Steve Buscemi playing a version of himself with a long-standing grudge against Paul's character. But what made this episode particularly interesting is that it was based on an actual incident from the real lives of Paul Reiser and Steve Buscemi. The episode, titled Token Friend, drew directly from something that happened years earlier when both men were part of the New York comedy scene. According to the backstory, Buscemi was performing stand-up comedy at a club, and his set was not going well. The audience wasn't responding, and the performance was bombing badly. In the middle of Buscemi's struggling set, Paul Reiser, who was a rising comedian at the time, was brought on stage by the club to replace Buscemi mid-performance. This kind of thing happened in comedy clubs when acts weren't working, but it was still a humiliating experience for any comedian to endure. The incident was apparently so discouraging and painful for Buscemi that it played a role in his decision to move away from stand-up comedy entirely and focus on acting instead. Buscemi went on to become one of the most respected character actors in Hollywood, starring in films by the Coen brothers and Martin Scorsese, and eventually landing his iconic role in Boardwalk Empire. When the Mad About You writers decided to turn this real-life awkward moment into an episode, Buscemi was willing to play along and poke fun at the memory. The episode added a layer of authenticity because both actors were essentially recreating a genuinely uncomfortable moment from their shared past, giving the comedy a sharp edge of reality. Fact 4. Murray was a shelter rescue dog.
How do I know that this never happened before?
Because I'm telling you.
So what? What is that? Honesty is like your strongest personality trait right now?
Murray the dog became one of the most beloved characters on Mad About You, stealing scenes with his expressive face and perfectly timed reactions. But his journey to television stardom had humble beginnings that would warm any animal lover's heart. The collie mix who played Murray was originally discovered at an animal shelter in Castaic, California, where he was just another dog waiting for someone to give him a home. His real name was Maui, and he was rescued from the shelter by animal trainers who saw potential in his intelligence and personality. Before landing his breakthrough role on Mad About You, Maui worked as an understudy for the film Bingo, a 1991 family comedy about a runaway circus dog. Being an understudy meant he was the backup dog in case the main animal couldn't perform, so he learned the routines and behaviors but didn't get much screen time. When casting began for Mad About You, the producers were looking for a dog who could hold his own on camera and react naturally to the actors. Maui's trainers brought him into audition, and he impressed everyone with his ability to hit his marks, respond to cues, and most importantly, look directly at the actors with an expression that seemed almost human. Once he was cast as Murray, Maui became a regular part of the show's ensemble, appearing in episodes throughout the series' run. His character was treated as a full member of the Bookman family, often serving as the silent witness to Paul and Jamie's conversations and arguments. The fact that this television star started his life in a shelter waiting for adoption adds a heartwarming dimension to his success story. Fact 5. Jamie caused the Blackout Thursday event.
But I seemed to never stop moving, and I was always coming up with some piece of business, and he thought, is this an actress hiding?
In 1994, NBC attempted something unprecedented in television history that has become known as Blackout Thursday, an ambitious crossover event that connected multiple sitcoms in their Thursday night lineup through a single storyline. Mad About You was at the center of this elaborate stunt, with Jamie Bachman serving as the character whose actions triggered the entire chain of events. In the Mad About You episode, Jamie was attempting to retrieve a lost earring from an electrical outlet in her apartment building's basement. Through a series of mishaps involving the building's electrical system, she accidentally caused a massive power outage that spread across New York City, plunging the entire metropolitan area into darkness. This wasn't just a plot point that stayed within the Mad About You universe. The blackout then appeared as a background element in that week's episodes of Friends and Madman of the People, with characters on those shows reacting to the sudden loss of power and dealing with the consequences. The crossover was meant to reward viewers who watched NBC's entire Thursday night comedy block by giving them a connected narrative thread running through all the shows. However, there was one notable holdout. Seinfeld, which was NBC's biggest comedy hit at the time, refused to participate in the Blackout Thursday event. The show's co-creator Larry David was protective of Seinfeld's independence and didn't want the series tied to other sitcom storylines. This meant the blackout affected most of NBC's Thursday lineup, but mysteriously skipped over Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer's World entirely. The experiment was a bold attempt at creating a shared television universe years before that concept became common. Fact 6. Kramer lived in Paul's old apartment.
I'm completely changing the configuration of the apartment. You're not going to believe it when you see it. Whole new lifestyle.
The connection between Mad About You and Seinfeld went beyond just airing on the same network, as the shows actually shared continuity through an elaborate crossover that revealed a surprising detail about one of television's most famous apartments. In a crossover episode, it was established that Paul Buchmann's bachelor pad apartment, the one he lived in before marrying Jamie, was later taken over by none other than Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld. This wasn't just a throwaway reference. The episode showed Paul visiting his old building and discovering that Kramer was now living there, having presumably found the place after Paul moved out to live with Jamie. The crossover included a clever meta-joke that highlighted the self-awareness of both shows existing in the same universe. During their conversation, Kramer casually mentioned that his neighbor Jerry was currently writing a sitcom for NBC, essentially referencing the fact that Seinfeld itself was a show about Jerry Seinfeld creating a sitcom for NBC within the show's universe. This created a kind of recursive loop where Mad About You existed in a world where Seinfeld was both a real show and a fictional show being created by a character. The crossover was a playful acknowledgement of NBC's Thursday night dominance in the mid-90s, when both shows were among the network's biggest hits. It rewarded fans who watched both series by giving them this unexpected connection that linked the two New York-based comedies together. The idea that Paul's old apartment eventually became Kramer's home added a fun layer of continuity to NBC's Thursday night lineup, suggesting that all these characters were living in the same version of New York City, just in different corners of it. Fact 7. Ursula connected Friends and Mad About You.
Incinerator?
You bet.
Do you think we should have?
Well, it doesn't really matter because it's too late.
Lisa Kudrow's character, Ursula the waitress, created one of the most unique connections in television history, linking two of NBC's biggest sitcoms in a way that no one expected when she first appeared on screen. Kudrow originally played Ursula as a recurring character on Mad About You, where she worked as a ditzy, somewhat rude waitress at Riff's, the restaurant that Paul and Jamie frequently visited. Ursula was funny, but relatively minor in the Mad About You universe, appearing occasionally when the Buchmanns went out to eat. Then in 1994, Lisa Kudrow was cast as Phoebe Buffay in a new NBC sitcom called Friends, which premiered that fall and quickly became a massive hit. The producers faced a potential problem. Audiences might be confused seeing the same actress playing what appeared to be a completely different character on another NBC show airing in the same time block. Rather than pretend the similarity didn't exist or ask viewers to simply accept two separate roles, the writers of both shows came up with a creative solution. They decided that Ursula and Phoebe were twin sisters, which explained why they looked identical but had totally different personalities. This wasn't planned from the beginning. Ursula was created first for Mad About You, with no thought that she'd eventually become Phoebe's twin. The twin-sister connection was a retroactive explanation, a way of turning a potential continuity problem into a clever piece of shared universe storytelling. Phoebe's relationship with her twin sister Ursula became a recurring storyline on Friends, with Ursula appearing in several episodes as Phoebe's difficult, self-centered sister who often caused problems. The connection allowed both shows to acknowledge each other's existence and gave fans of both series a fun Easter egg to appreciate, while also solving a practical casting issue in an inventive way. Fact 8. Hank Azaria created his dog walker role.
Yeah, I was fascinated. Like, do these guys always sound this way? Became the comedic premise. One of the first ones.
Long before Hank Azaria became famous as the voice of countless characters on The Simpsons, he had a memorable recurring role on Mad About You as Nat the Dog Walker. But the story of how he got that part reveals an interesting glimpse into his creative process and his personal connection to the show. Azaria was dating Helen Hunt at the time the show was in production, and he would often hang around the set during filming, watching rehearsals and spending time with Hunt between scenes. During this downtime, rather than just sitting quietly, Azaria started entertaining the cast and crew by doing various character voices and impressions. One of these characters was a quirky dog walker with a distinctive voice and manner of speaking. The character was based on someone Azaria actually knew in real life, a person whose unique way of talking and unusual personality had stuck in his memory. The writers and producers watching these impromptu performances were impressed enough that they decided to create an actual role for this character on the show. Nat the Dog Walker became a recurring character who appeared multiple times throughout the series, always bringing an eccentric energy to his scenes. Azaria's portrayal of Nat showed his talent for creating memorable characters through voice work and physical comedy, skills that would serve him incredibly well when he later joined The Simpsons and became one of the most prolific voice actors in television history. The fact that the role essentially emerged from Azaria hanging around the set and entertaining people between takes shows how creative opportunities can arise in unexpected ways. It also highlights the collaborative atmosphere on Mad About You, where the people making the show were open to incorporating new ideas and giving chances to talented performers who showed up with interesting character work. Fact 9. Mabel's name is a hidden acronym.
To be this nice guy.
Well, I can see why you're troubled.
When Paul and Jamie's daughter was born in the show's later seasons, the choice of her name seemed sweet and old-fashioned, but there was actually a hidden meaning built into it that served as a tribute to one of television's most beloved classic sitcoms. The baby was named Mabel, and the show provided a specific origin story for how Paul and Jamie settled on that particular name. In the episode where they're deciding what to call their daughter, Carol Burnett's character, who played Jamie's mother Teresa, suggested the name by explaining that it stood for Mothers Always Bring Extra Love. The first letter of each word spelled out M-A-B-E-L, creating an acronym that gave the name a sentimental meaning tied to motherhood and family. But this wasn't just a random sweet phrase invented for the show. It was actually a direct homage to The Dick Van Dyke Show, the classic 1960s sitcom that had been a major influence on Mad About You's creators. The Dick Van Dyke Show featured a similar naming convention in one of its episodes, and Mad About You was paying tribute to that legacy by incorporating the same idea into their own show. Both series focused on the marriage between a funny, neurotic husband and his sharp, patient wife, dealing with work pressures, family dynamics, and the small conflicts of daily life. The Dick Van Dyke Show was frequently cited by Paul Reiser and the writing staff as a major inspiration for Mad About You's tone and approach to comedy. By using this naming device for their character's daughter, they were acknowledging that debt and connecting their show to television comedy history. Fans who caught the reference appreciated the nod to a classic series, while viewers who didn't know the connection still got a sweet moment about choosing a baby's name. Fact 10. Helen Hunt won 4 consecutive Emmys.
Levels, the way she thinks mostly. I think Nancy and I tend to think and even speak in a similar way, so it was effortless.
Helen Hunt's performance as Jamie Buckman wasn't just beloved by audiences, it was also recognized by the television industry in a way that few comedic performances ever achieve. Hunt won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a comedy series 4 years in a row, taking home the trophy in 1996, 1997, 1998, and 1999. This kind of sustained recognition from the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences is extremely rare, especially in the competitive comedy category where there are always strong performances vying for attention. Winning once is an achievement. Winning twice shows the performance wasn't a fluke, but winning 4 consecutive times establishes complete dominance in the category and recognition that an actor has created something truly special. Hunt's portrayal of Jamie balanced sharp comic timing with genuine emotional depth, making Jamie feel like a real person rather than just a collection of sitcom quirks. She could deliver a cutting one-liner and then turn around and play a scene of real vulnerability or frustration without the shift feeling jarring. The 4 consecutive Emmy wins solidified Mad About You's critical reputation during its peak years and proved that the show was more than just a ratings success. It was creating performances that stood up to serious scrutiny from industry professionals. Hunt's achievement put her in elite company among television actors, joining a very short list of performers who had achieved that level of consecutive recognition. The Emmy wins also came during a period when Mad About You was at the height of its popularity, airing in NBC's powerful Thursday night lineup. Hunt's success with the role would help launch her film career, including her Oscar-winning performance in As Good as It Gets, just a year after her first Emmy win for Mad About You. Fact 11. The audience. Oz were edited.
Last weekend, when you were at your grandmother's thing, and then I thought, no, you know what? Just watching it by myself is just too wrong.
Glad you waited.
All right.
Out Mad About You was filmed in front of a live studio audience, which meant that real people were watching the scenes unfold and reacting naturally to what they saw on stage. This is a traditional sitcom format that creates an authentic laugh track from genuine responses rather than canned laughter added in post-production. However, Paul Reiser had a very specific problem with one particular audience reaction that occurred regularly during filming, and he made sure the editors removed it from the final broadcast episodes. Whenever Paul and Jamie would have a sweet, romantic moment on screen, the live studio audience would often respond with a collective "aw" sound, that warm, sentimental noise that crowds make when they see something touching or cute. This is a natural human response, and in the moment of filming it showed that the audience was emotionally invested in the couple's relationship. But Reiser absolutely hated it. He found the "aw" reaction unbearable to listen to, describing it as something that shriveled his spine whenever he heard it. In Reiser's view, these sweet moments between the characters should speak for themselves without the audience telegraphing to home viewers that they're supposed to find something touching. He felt the "aw" sounds undercut the genuine emotion of the scenes and made them feel manipulated or overly saccharine. So Reiser made sure that the sound editors went through the footage and carefully removed those audience reactions from the final versions of episodes that aired on television. Home viewers watching on NBC would hear the audience laughing at the jokes, but those sentimental sighs and ahs were stripped out, leaving just the actors' performances and dialogue. This gave the emotional moments more room to breathe, without the audience reaction cueing viewers how to feel about what they were watching. Fact 12. The show aired every night, except Friday.
All right, what's going on here?
Nothing.
Ooh, mushrooms in here.
Come on.
Well, it's just that everything is worked out.
Over the course of its 7-season run from 1992 to 1999, Mad About You moved around NBC's weekly schedule more than almost any other successful sitcom in television history. The show appeared in time slots on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday at various points during its run, touching every night of the week except Friday. This constant shuffling reflected NBC's attempts to use the show's popularity to anchor different nights and compete with programs on other networks. The show originally premiered on Wednesday nights before moving to NBC's dominant Thursday night comedy lineup, where it became part of the network's powerhouse must-see TV block, alongside shows like Seinfeld and Friends. Thursday nights were where Mad About You found its biggest audience and achieved its peak ratings. benefiting from the huge number of viewers who tuned in to NBC that night. However, as the show moved into its later seasons, NBC shifted it to Sunday nights and then Tuesday nights, trying to build strong comedy blocks on those evenings. According to reports from the show's producers and cast, these moves away from Thursday night significantly hurt the series. Paul Reiser later commented that when the show left its Thursday night slot, it lost its moment of heat, that cultural relevance and water cooler conversation that comes from being part of a major television event. Sunday and Tuesday nights didn't have the same built-in audience, and viewers who had watched religiously on Thursday sometimes didn't follow the show to its new time slots. The constant schedule changes made it harder for casual viewers to find the show, and ratings declined as a result. The fact that Mad About You aired on 6 different nights over 7 seasons shows both how valuable NBC considered the property and how the network struggled to find the right permanent home for it after its Thursday night success. Fact 13. Paul referenced his own Aliens role.
The reason we never figured out, the club owner who I never met was kind of teeing it up and go, "You're going to like this one girl." I go, "Well, that doesn't."
Mad About You was filled with small self-referential jokes and nods to Paul Reiser's real-life career. And one of the cleverest came when the show acknowledged his role in one of science fiction cinema's most famous franchises. In an episode where characters were discussing the Alien movies, specifically the scene where the alien creature violently bursts out of a character's chest, Paul's character made a comment about only having seen the first Alien film. This was a sly inside joke for viewers who knew that Paul Reiser had actually appeared in Aliens, the 1986 sequel directed by James Cameron. In that film, Reiser played Carter Burke, a corporate executive who turns out to be one of the story's main villains, willing to sacrifice the lives of Sigourney Weaver's character and others for corporate profit. Burke was a memorably slimy character, very different from the likable, neurotic personality that Reiser played on Mad About You. By having his sitcom character claim he'd only seen the first movie, the show was playfully acknowledging Reiser's real-world appearance in the sequel, while also creating a joke for fans who recognized the reference. It's the kind of meta-humor that Mad About You occasionally indulged in, blurring the line between Paul Reiser, the actor, and Paul Buchman, the character. The joke worked on multiple levels. Viewers who didn't know about Reiser's role in Aliens would just hear a casual comment about movie preferences, while fans who remembered his villainous turn in the science fiction classic would appreciate the winking reference to his own filmography. These kinds of subtle callbacks to Reiser's career outside the show added an extra layer of comedy for attentive viewers without interrupting the flow of the story for everyone else. Fact 14. The neighbor's husband changed. Twice.
You are a strange, amazing man.
Can I tell you that?
Continuity problems are common in long-running television series, but Mad About You had a particularly strange situation involving one of their recurring characters that resulted in an unusual solution to explain away a casting change. The Buchmans' British neighbor Maggie was a recurring character throughout the series, and she was married to a man named Hal, who appeared occasionally in episodes. However, over the course of the show's run, the character of Hal was played by 2 completely different actors at different times. This kind of casting change usually happens when an actor is unavailable, or there's some kind of behind-the-scenes issue, and most shows either hope the audience won't notice or simply don't address it. But Mad About You decided to acknowledge the change in a creative way that actually became part of the show's continuity. Rather than pretending both actors were playing the same Hal and hoping viewers wouldn't catch the switch, the writers decided to retroactively explain that these were actually 2 different husbands entirely. According to the revised backstory, Maggie had been married multiple times, and the 2 different Halls that viewers had seen over the years were her first husband and her third husband, separate men who just happened to share the same first name. This meant there was also a second husband somewhere in between who was never seen on screen, making Maggie's romantic history even more complicated. The explanation was both a practical solution to a casting problem and a character development choice that added layers to Maggie's background. It suggested she'd had a much more eventful personal life than viewers had initially realized, and it turned a potential continuity error into an intentional character trait. For fans paying close attention to the show's details, this retroactive explanation was a clever way to maintain consistency while acknowledging that, yes, something had changed. Fact 15. $1 million salaries for final season.
Texting your mother.
Okay, you know what? Maybe put down the phone, Cheech.
By the time Mad About You reached its 7th and final season in 1998 and 1999, the show's 2 stars had achieved the kind of salary that represented the absolute top tier of television earnings at that time. Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser were each earning $1 million per episode for the final season, a massive increase from the $250,000 per episode they had been making in earlier seasons. This put them in the same salary stratosphere as the cast of Friends, who had famously negotiated as a group to reach the $1 million per episode level. For Hunt and Reiser, these salaries reflected both the show's success over 7 seasons and their status as the complete center of the series, appearing in virtually every scene of every episode. However, despite these enormous salaries and the show's past success, the final season faced serious challenges that money couldn't solve. NBC had moved Mad About You from its successful Tuesday night time slot, where it had been performing well, to other nights in the schedule. This move proved disastrous for the show's ratings, which plummeted compared to previous seasons. Viewers who had made Mad About You part of their Tuesday night routine didn't follow the show to its new time slot in the same numbers, and the series lost the momentum and cultural relevance it had built up over the years. The combination of declining ratings and those enormous per-episode salaries made the show increasingly expensive for NBC to keep on the air. By the end of the 7th season, it was clear that the series had run its course, and the show ended its run in May of 1999. The final season serves as a reminder that even massive salaries and past success can't guarantee ratings, and that time slot placement remains crucial for television shows trying to maintain their audience.